The events that unfolded after the fall of Cersei Lannister were even more brutal than any song ever composed. When Jon Snow confronted Daenerys in the throne room, her mind was already shrouded in darkness. In the original series, he plunged the dagger. But here, Daenerys read the hesitation in Jon's eyes, the betrayal, the weight of honor, the same look she had seen in so many others. Before he could move, she gave the order with a tear in her eye. Dracarys. In a thunderous burst, Drogon appeared from the skies and scorched Jon Snow without hesitation. The embers of betrayal fueled the Dragon Queen's fury. Without Jon's love, without the hope she had placed in Tyrion or Varys, who had been executed days earlier for treason, Daenerys fell into an abyss of grief. Jorah was no longer there to protect her. Missandei was dead. Grey Worm had also lost his life. With all loyal faces wiped away, she saw no other choice but to rule with fire. And when King's Landing fell, it was different from the series. It was a direct response to Jon's death. An uncontrollable rage exploded in flames upon the innocent and guilty alike. The Iron Throne was not melted out of grief, but out of wrath. Days passed. The silence of a dead city echoed like a haunting scream in her mind. Victory felt empty. Daenerys isolated herself among the ruins of the Red Keep, and there she began to feel things. Visions, distant echoes, omens that did not belong to that world. Dark figures with helmets and metallic voices. Dead stars and planets at war. Sounds that came from the future or from another realm. At first, she believed it to be madness. She thought she had finally gone insane like her father, the Mad King. But when she dreamed of red flames spinning like swords and saw cloaked figures with yellow eyes, she understood. Something was awakening. Drogon watched her silently. His gaze, once wild, now carried something more. An instinct beyond that of a beast. On a cloudy morning, as strange clouds gathered in the sky, he nudged Daenerys with his snout, urging her to climb on. Without knowing why, she obeyed. They flew east, not to Valyria nor to Meereen. They passed beyond the Jade Sea, crossing regions even Karth dared not name, until they reached a point where the sky tore open into white, black, and lilac lights. A living storm at the farthest edge of Essos. It was a dimensional rift, the result of forgotten experiments conducted by Darth Sidious in a galaxy far, far away. Palpatine had attempted to breach the boundaries of space and time in search of absolute power, and this time not just in the known galaxy, but in all dimensions he could find. He performed experiments, and fragments of these tests generated echoes across the dimensions. And now, for the first time, someone had answered. On the other side of the galaxy, in Mustafar, Darth Vader awoke from meditation with a chill down his spine. Vader, already aware of his master's experiments, sensed something different this time. A presence that didn't just touch the Force. It ignited it with pain and desire. In the flaming silence of Mustafar, he felt rage, loss, power, a mirror. "She is like me," he muttered. When he reported it to Sidious, the Emperor was intrigued. That rift, he said, might be the key to ultimate dominion not just of the galaxy but of all dimensions. With an imperious gesture, Palpatine authorized an incursion. A legion of stormtroopers would be sent, equipped with special probes to locate the being they had glimpsed through the rift. Daenerys, still on Drogon's back and flying farther and farther away, had finally landed. She lay beside her dragon and fell asleep, her body suddenly too tired to remain standing. Hours passed, and she awoke from her trance beneath the cracked sky at the continent's edge. The presence of the Force was growing inside her, but it was still confusing, instinctive. This time she didn't have a vision of strange places with people wearing futuristic armor or chariots flying like her dragons. She saw only herself. The vision showed her as she had never seen herself. At her peak she didn't know she could reach. That's when the skies lit up with strange flying objects. TIE fighters tearing through the winds of Essos. The ground shook as a black pod landed. Men in white armor emerged with weapons that roared with light and heat. They were exactly like those she had seen in her visions, so she already knew they were enemies. Drogon roared, but Daenerys, still shaken, hesitated. The blasters fired, striking the ground around her. The pain awakened the force within her. Instinctively, she raised her hands, and the nearest soldiers were hurled against the rocks like leaves in the wind. The commander, stunned by the psychic blast, shouted orders in an unknown language. Daenerys ran to Drogon, surprised by what had just happened, but feeling it oddly familiar after her latest vision. Rage pulsed in her chest like never before, and seeing her dragon return, there was only one thing to say, "Dracarys," she shouted. And this time, the flames that burst from Drogon felt more intense, as if the force itself flowed through him. The soldiers screamed, the ships burned, and the sky fell silent again. But the damage was done. The force had revealed its presence. And Vader, watching everything through a surviving probe, knew he had to find her personally. Days later, when the dimensional rift reopened with fury, Daenerys didn't run. She wore an improvised tunic, hair blowing in the wind, eyes darker than ever. Drogon rested in the background. From the shadows of the portal, a dark figure emerged, cloaked and breathing with a metallic rhythm that made the air vibrate. He walked slowly through the ruins of Essos, stopping before the Mother of Dragons. His red eyes stared at her in silence. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. And then, Darth Vader spoke. "So, here you are." Darth Vader walked slowly toward Daenerys, each step firm, each breath rhythmic and threatening. The Mother of Dragons watched him without flinching, though with suspicion. He did not attack. Instead, he offered her words. "You know the power of destruction, but I can show you the power of creation. A new world where weak kings and traitors will never exist again." She remained silent, but inside her, something stirred. The desire to begin again, not as a queen, but as something more. Vader's words hammered in her mind. He spoke of distant planets, of ancient orders that ruled with wisdom and strength, of an empire where she could reign like she never had in Westeros or Essos. She felt the cold sting of memory. Jon looking at her before his betrayal. Varys being burned. Yora dying for her. Missandei beheaded. Grey Worm destroyed by grief. Her 2 dragon children murdered. King's Landing itself now nothing but ash. There was nothing left for her in that world. Nothing remained. "There are no more thrones for me. Only fire," she whispered. And then she looked up and accepted. Drogon, however, hesitated. When Vader reopened the dimensional rift, the dragon pulled back, letting out a suspicious roar. Daenerys tried to convince him, but he turned and flew off, not once looking back. With sorrow in her eyes, she asked Vader if she could ever return. "Yes, the portal remains, for those who master it. My master will show you how." She stood in silence, watching the sky being torn by the wings of her last son until he vanished. "Goodbye, Drogon," she whispered, before stepping into the portal. Crossing it felt like falling into a nightmare. Screams, spiraling colors, fragments of memories blending with visions of other worlds. When she emerged, she was aboard something she had never seen before. An Imperial ship, cold walls, metallic sounds, control panels glowing blue and red. Strange creatures watched her. Soldiers, droids, and even beings of other species. Her heart pounded. For a moment, she thought she had gone mad, just like her father, the Mad King. But then she laughed. "Why not?" she said under her breath. "Maybe madness is my inheritance after all." Vader observed. Even in his rigidity, he noticed something curious. She did not bow, did not back away. There was fear, yes, but also curiosity. When she saw space for the first time, that black ocean scattered with stars, her eyes filled with awe. "Is all this yours?" "Ours," he corrected. Slowly, between cold explanations and moments of silence, Vader found himself recounting old stories of battles between Jedi and Sith, and realized that he was enjoying it. Something about Daenerys reminded him of himself. The fall, the loss, the fury. Training began on Mustafar, a planet of fire, covered in rivers of lava and volcanic mountains. A living hell. But Daenerys wasn't intimidated. Vader watched her walk through the vapors, completely at home. A simple test. He took her to a lava bank and pointed to a glowing rock. Touch it. She did, without hesitation. Her fingers pressed against the stone. Nothing happened. You don't feel pain? Fire doesn't frighten me. I am the fire, she replied, eyes blazing. Vader said nothing, but in his mind, a name began to form. The perfect apprentice. With training sabers, she learned the basic movements. Then came mental manipulation, and Daenerys, used to commanding crowds and seducing councils, found it easy to influence weak minds. In induced visions, she saw Jon again. But this time she killed him without remorse. She began predicting enemy movements, sensing intentions before they were spoken. Vader was impressed. She wasn't just force-sensitive. She shaped it like a dragon shapes fire, with instinct and destruction. He took her to the battlefields of Mustafar. Unstable platforms over lava rivers, training arenas with armed droids, corridors filled with mental traps and illusions. She faced them all with a mix of savagery and precision. In one test, Vader released a native monster, a worm that survived magma, and Daenerys did not flee. She focused, used the Force to pull molten iron stakes, and pierced the beast as if she had done it before. She fights like a Sith, but thinks like a queen, Vader murmured, intrigued. In another instance, she faced 3 dueling droids at once. With only a newly built red saber, she spun, struck, retreated. When she was disarmed, she didn't hesitate. She used the Force to hurl the weapons themselves at her opponents. Her emotions fueled her. Remember, Vader said, anger is not your enemy. It's a tool. She embraced it, fed on pain, on longing, on the destruction of her world. Every tear she didn't cry made her strikes sharper. Every memory of loss, a reason to never turn back. In moments of rest, she began to question. Who were you before the mask? Vader rarely answered, but in one of those conversations he spoke of Mustafar, of Padme. She listened intently. You lost a queen, and I lost a king, she said. There was a quiet respect between them. 2 remnants forged by fire. 2 heirs of destruction. At the end of a lunar cycle on Mustafar, Vader declared, You are ready to be named. Daenerys knelt before him, saber in hand. From this day forward, you leave your name behind. The past is dead. You were born in fire. You destroyed thrones. You are Darth Nery. She lifted her eyes. Nery? I like it. Something new was born then. Not Targaryen, not merely Sith. A hybrid entity. A new dragon for a new galaxy. Your training is almost complete, said Vader, staring at Mustafar's red horizon. The lava flowed like veins in a pulsating body. Daenerys, standing with her saber in hand, breathed calmly and centered. Soon, you'll meet the master behind all of this. The creator of the rift, the true architect of the order that is to come. She merely nodded, though something bothered her. Is he more powerful than you? She asked bluntly. Vader's mask slowly turned toward her. He is the supreme leader of the Empire. Without him, I would never have known power. But that answer didn't satisfy her. Then why do you still need him? She asked later, as they trained object manipulation using the Force. If you're so powerful, why do you still bow to someone else? Vader paused for a moment. The truth was that question disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. In front of her, he remained firm. Palpatine sees the whole. We are instruments of his will. But at night, alone in his meditation chamber, her words echoed. He stared at the empty helmet he sometimes left on the table. What if I'm not just an instrument? Even with those doubts, training continued. Vader announced that they would leave for Coruscant soon. The Emperor will meet you, but first you have a mission. Daenerys didn't ask what it was. She simply nodded. At another moment, as they both watched the lava streams from atop an obsidian tower, she looked at him. What's underneath that mask? He turned, surprised by the question. You wouldn't want to see. It's a difficult sight. Scars caused by fire. She gave a faint smile. I'm a dragon, Vader. Fire has never frightened me. A heavy silence followed. Vader hesitated. For the first time, he seemed vulnerable. The internal mechanisms of his suit echoed louder. "I was burned," he said, almost as a lament, "by someone I loved." She observed him without judgment. "I burned too, for love, and then for rage." The moment between them seemed suspended in time, until finally he brought his hands to the helmet. With a mechanical hum and a soft release of air, the helmet unlocked. He lifted it, and then she saw Vader's face, deformed, covered in scars, his eyes marked by time and pain. He waited for the shock, the disgust, the rejection, but Daenerys stepped closer calmly, without rushing. Her eyes didn't flinch. She reached out and touched his face gently. "You're the one who survived the fire," she whispered. "That doesn't scare me. It makes me understand." Vader closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to absorb that touch. But soon he pulled away. He put the helmet back on and disappeared into the darkness of the fortress. That moment, however, would haunt him for nights. In his meditation chamber, he replayed the moment again and again. The touch, the absence of fear, her tone of voice. Padme had never seen him like that. But Daenerys had, and she didn't back away. He tried to bury the memory, tried to focus on the Emperor's plans, but her eyes, fiery and proud, emerged like living embers in the dark. "She's like me, but freer," he thought. Over the weeks, he began to look at her differently, not just as an apprentice, but as something more. And she noticed too. When she saw him walk, firm and imposing, she remembered Drogo, the silent warrior, ruthless yet protective. When he spoke of honor and loss, she saw in his eyes the same conflict she saw in Jon Snow before his betrayal. But she had learned. She would never give her heart again. She would not be destroyed by pain. And yet, with Vader, it was different. He didn't lie. He didn't belittle her. He trained her to destroy, yes, but also to understand. And that confused her. The training changed. It no longer focused only on sabers or combat. Vader introduced deep mental exercises. Daenerys sat in silence, meditating on the past. Images of fire, of thrones, of losses. Vader taught her to shape those memories, to channel them to strengthen her connection to the Force. In one session, she saw Tyrion being judged by her. In another, she saw herself being hailed in unknown worlds. The line between past and future blurred. "Master your mind, and you will master galaxies," Vader said. They began to train communication through the Force. Vader taught her to sense the presence of distant beings, to listen to unspoken intentions. In one training session, she intercepted the pain of a rebel prisoner in Mustafar's orbit. In another, she predicted a droid attack before it happened. "You are seeing beyond the veil," Vader praised. "Soon you won't need eyes to fight." And she believed him. For the first time, she felt she was becoming something greater than the Queen of Westeros. She was becoming a legend, and in the moments between training, they talked about what they had lost, about what they wanted. He told her about Padme without naming her. She spoke of her youth, of her fear of being weak, of her thirst for justice. There was pain in every story, and understanding in every silence. Vader, who had always feared being seen as less than a machine, felt alive beside her. And Daenerys, who had always felt like a monster, felt accepted. Amid the fire of Mustafar, something was born, stronger than promises or thrones, until one day he appeared without the helmet. No words, no ceremony. He simply emerged as a man, his face exposed, the scars visible. She looked at him with serenity. "I prefer you like this," she said with a faint smile. "Not as a specter, but as who you really are." He looked away, but did not walk off. Something had changed. They could no longer return to just master and apprentice. There was something else now, something dangerously human. At last, the ship lifted off from Mustafar, shrouded in ash vapors and echoes of lava. Daenerys watched the planet vanish beneath the infernal clouds as Vader, without his helmet, remained silent beside her. "You already have your Sith name, Darth Nery," he said in a hoarse voice. But now it's time for your first true mission in the name of the Empire, and in the name of the Emperor." She didn't reply, only nodded. She knew this meeting would change everything, and she felt, deep in her core, that fate was approaching with brutal force. During the journey to Coruscant, Vader kept his helmet off and the two spoke little, but each word carried weight. She could feel his tension, and the weight of what was to come. As they approached the main vessel where the Emperor awaited, Vader slowly put his protective mask back on. "Why?" she asked. "He must not see me like this," he said. "Not yet." Daenerys silently understood. It wasn't fear of the Emperor, it was the reflection of an old submission. A wound that had never healed. The corridors of the main ship were a spectacle of power and domination. Soldiers lined up, Imperial officers hurried about, suspicious glances all around. Daenerys noticed the details, the systematic oppression, the icy grandeur of the architecture, and realized she was witnessing an empire unlike anything her world had ever seen. Upon entering the main chamber, where only she, Vader, and the Emperor would be present, the silence turned sepulchral. Palpatine awaited them at the center of a colossal hall, surrounded by black columns and dim light. "Lord Vader has told me much about you," began the Emperor with a cynical smile. "Darth Nery, daughter of fire, but I see in your eyes that something is still missing." He rose from his throne. "Power? Yes. Strength? No doubt. But there is still hesitation. Emotion. A true Sith preserves nothing. She kills the past. And you have yet to kill yours." Daenerys felt the tension rise. Vader, standing beside her, looked surprised, even offended. "She is already as powerful as any of us," he said. "No," Palpatine replied with disdain. "She still lacks hatred." Daenerys, fury in her gaze, ignited her red saber. With a flick of her wrist, she cut through one of the massive steel doors beside her, and with the force, tore down a wall of metal as if it were paper. The floor trembled with her outburst. She ripped chunks from the ship and hurled them down the corridor. The Emperor didn't even blink. "Impressive," he murmured, "but not enough." Then, coldly, he delivered his decree. "You want to be complete? Return to your world. Kill the dragon. Destroy what remains of your soul." Daenerys turned pale. "No," she whispered. "Drogon is part of me. He's one of my children. The last one left." Palpatine smiled. "Exactly. And that's why he must die. If you refuse," he said, "you will never see your world again. The portal is under my control." She turned to Vader in shock. "You knew about this?" He hesitated. "She's not ready yet," he insisted. "Silence," the Emperor roared. "If she doesn't comply, she'll be discarded. Like so many before her." The argument escalated. Darth Nery shouted that she would never kill her dragon. Palpatine, without ceremony, ordered, "Imprison her." Vader stood frozen. Now, reluctantly, he obeyed. He took Daenerys to a cell lined with containment fields, where the Force could not penetrate. The following days were hellish. Palpatine barked orders, demanded progress. "If she won't bow, we'll sever the connection and open the portal for another. There are billions of worlds to explore." But Vader, whenever he could, would sneak away to see Daenerys. Exhausted, but unbroken. "I'm not your prisoner," she'd say. "And you know it." He would step closer to the cell. "You have more power than he does. You feel it, don't you?" Vader looked away. "You're more than a servant of orders. You're a masked king, not a dog." She whispered the words calmly, and he listened. The worst part was that Palpatine's own words kept echoing in Vader's mind. The request he made of Daenerys was entirely different from what he once made of him, back when he was Anakin Skywalker. To him, Palpatine had promised the chance to keep the people he loved alive. To her, he demanded she bring death, the death of someone important. Vader began to question whether the promises had always been empty. It was on a silent night that she convinced him. "You know who's truly right. Not him. You." She approached the containment barrier, even weakened. "You were forged by fire, Vader. Like me. but you let it enslave you. Slowly, she placed her hand against the field. Free me. Let's end him together. Vader's gaze lingered on hers. Something ancient broke. There was no fear, only decision. And that night, he disabled the cell and freed Darth Nery. They crossed the corridors in silence. The ship slept, guarded by droids and distracted officers. They reached the Emperor's chambers. Palpatine was waiting. Predictable, he said. Weak. And he attacked with fury. A blue bolt burst from his hands. Vader intercepted it with his saber. Daenerys spun through the air, striking at the Emperor, who dodged with unnatural agility. The ground cracked. The air trembled. The battle began. Palpatine leapt into a twisted, spinning strike with his red saber. Daenerys dodged and hurled him into the wall with the Force. He rebounded and unleashed a bolt of lightning at Vader, who barely absorbed it. Vader struck with a sequence of 3 stabs, left, center, high, but Palpatine dodged them laughing. Daenerys summoned a wave of energy that launched several structures across the room. The Emperor used the Force to freeze the objects mid-air and send them back. Darth Nery was thrown to the ceiling and fell hard, but recovered quickly and launched herself like a spear, her saber spinning, forcing Palpatine to defend with both hands, interrupting the lightning that was holding Vader in place. Vader recovered and prepared to unleash the Force, while Palpatine focused on him. Hands extended, lightning and raw energy compressing the air between them like a suspended earthquake. Vader's eyes trembled. His helmet creaked. It was like an arm wrestling match, but with the Force, he was at a disadvantage. And then, Daenerys crept behind, silent as a shadow, and with a cry, plunged her red saber into the Emperor's heart. He screamed. The energy exploded. Lightning danced across the walls. And then, silence. Palpatine's body fell with a heavy thud, as if time itself had collapsed with him. The energy that once filled the room vanished all at once, and a suffocating silence took over. The kind that comes after a storm, filled with remnants of chaos. Vader staggered back. Sparks flew from the side of his mask, which now seemed less like armor and more like a collapsing prison. Daenerys approached slowly, her saber still ablaze, and the glowing dust of battle danced around her like ash in the wind. She stopped before him, staring with the intensity of someone who no longer saw a master, but an equal. "It's over," she said, her voice firm, carrying the weight of 2 shattered realities, Westeros and the Empire. Vader slowly lifted his gaze to her, and in the eyes behind the mask, there was more than exhaustion. There was freedom. When she spoke again, her voice was a whisper that sounded like an absolute command. "Take it off. Let the world see." For a moment, he hesitated. But then, with trembling hands, he released the latches of his helmet and removed it. The cold air touched his burned face, but he didn't flinch. For the first time, there was no shame, only acceptance. Daenerys knelt before him. Her gaze, fiery like a dragon's, now met a new reflection. Not of a monster, but of a reborn man. "The Empire is ours now," she declared, with the conviction of someone who had burned everything to begin anew. "But we'll do it our way." She rose slowly, her eyes fixed on the infinite. "First, I need my dragon."